The European Commission for Rating Video Games has now stated that if you put any kind of in-game purchase inside of your game, you gotta warn people on the box.
Hot take!
You may be familiar with the ESRB, but in Europe they use a system called PEGI, which is essentially the same thing, it's just in Europe and not in North America. Now they've established some kind of new rule right now where basically if you have any kind of game that has any kind of digital transaction that costs money, you have to put a warning on the box, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that's right. So for a while now in using the PEGI system itself, they had to tell consumers that they had in-game purchases digitally, but now it's physically going to be on the box. So this includes not just microtransactions or loot boxes, like people have been calling out for being egregious recently, but it also includes DLC as well, which is kind of a wide berth of things as far as I'm concerned. There's a big difference between DLC and microtransactions.
Yes, yeah. DLC in my mind is always something that is, it can be downloadable content of any sort. It doesn't have to be paid. But in this instance, I think what the warning really is aimed at is essentially stuff you have to pay for, right?
Right. It's like a blanket statement, and I kind of understand why they're doing this. It's not so much for the people that are fairly educated with the software, people that maybe read the news frequently with video games, but maybe more for parents, adults with children that want to kind of see, like, or be warned that, hey, keep an eye on your credit card statement or something. Your child could be spending money on this game that you're not aware of, right?
Yeah, I think basically how this works out for a lot of people is that there's going to be parents out there that buy a video game and consider that a one purchase. Like, they're not going to buy more things after that. A lot of parents still treat movies the same way they treat video games. So if they go out and buy a Blu-ray or a DVD or anything like that and bring it home, they don't expect additional purchases to happen because of that, right? And that's something that video games have been notoriously bad for these past couple of years. And I think that's why PEGI has basically established this.
Yeah. So the ESRB has pretty well established this in North America as well. Right before we started recording, I was like, oh, really? I got to check and see if our rating system's similar. So I checked Madden 2K19. Because I very rarely look at the ratings on game boxes. You know, my hands are up in the air, all truth be told. But yeah, on the back, it does say, using the ESRB system, when there are in-game purchases and microtransactions. So now that PEGI is adopting this feature as well, or this label as well, they are saying that also, if a game doesn't necessarily have this branding at the very beginning on the back, if the game decides to kind of slip in those microtransactions or in-game purchases later, they may need to relabel the box itself, maybe place a sticker on the box. Yeah, so that's...
Now, see, this is like a big conversation about loot boxes and like paid content and stuff like that. And I feel that by doing this kind of stuff, it almost devalues the game when you see it on the store shelves, because you're looking at this thinking, well, I'm not getting the whole package. See, in the future, when they release versions of games that are like Game of the Year Collector's Edition...
We see those all the time.
Right? Yeah. Like, let's just say the new Hitman release. That new Hitman release has everything included, so there's no reason to purchase additional items.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you brought that up, because we have that in the studio. As soon as I started researching this, I flipped it around. I was like, this has in-game purchases, right? And I was like, oh, it's the definitive edition. It doesn't. It's not on the label at all.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. So, like, one thing that I started thinking about was... these labels are being placed onto games specifically that have in-game purchases. I started wondering, like, okay, if there's a really evil sort of like mind behind like trying to still absorb money somehow from whales. Whales are purchasers that would go out and just like spend a heck of a lot of money to get like a bunch of loot boxes and things like that.
Sure.
Would people try to circumvent this rating system somehow? Because there are some games that don't necessarily offer in-game purchases within the game itself, but maybe within their website. Which has been done. So do you think that there might be more of a push to circumvent like the actual in-game stuff itself?
You know, I feel that there's going to be a lot of developers out there that may not have DLC in mind for now, but they will just put that warning on there just to be like, okay, we're going to do it eventually.
Right,
Might as well just keep our boxes safe for now, right?
Because do you think that would maybe bite into their budget somehow later? I guess it would, right?
You have to. You have to reprint. You have to like put it right back in the PEGI system and everything.
We could see a future as well where maybe there would be less of a push for microtransactions or in-game purchases or DLC, whatever you want to call it, because like maybe developers would imagine folks would pick up a game, see that there's in-game purchases, and then maybe like back off. Maybe this could push consumers to not pick up these games.
You know, it's a factor. I think that the moment DLC is introduced, any kind of downloadable content, what the game initially was can radically change. We've seen this again and again. Anybody that bought the original Fortnite has now a completely different game than what they wanted, right? The same thing has happened with DLC packages we've seen. Now, you might consider Grand Theft Auto 5 a game that doesn't have any DLC, but it actually has a lot of DLC. There's a lot of online content that was added over time. You don't necessarily have to buy any of that. You can unlock it in there, and there's no actual like downloadable expansion packs. They're just all online portions that you just can go and play for free. But what really happened with changing all that was originally there was not really this huge focus on buying money, right? But then it started to become this thing where now you get shark cards and now you start putting in your own currency into the game that gets turned into its own digital currency. And there's all these people out there that are trying to like gamify the money and try and earn all that stuff. So it basically becomes like a gambling system within itself. The same thing happens with stuff like Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike had a huge gambling problem, and it was a huge problem for kids.
Different skins, different knives and guns and stuff. I remember that. There were websites specifically tailored for this sort of gambling thing with Counter-Strike.
And that's essentially what loot boxes are. And, you know, guess what, folks? Loot boxes are terrible, and they're never good in any instance, no matter what. No matter what anyone says, no matter what the developer says. They're just bad. So they've always been bad, and this is just going to be something that people can see on the box and go, you know what? Maybe I don't buy this game.
Yeah, that's true. So there is a label with the PEGI system that labels a game as having some sort of gambling component, or saying that like maybe you're not like literally gambling, putting money into the game, but it does like have like a casino in it or something that might promote the bad habit of gambling. Do you believe that sort of that labeling should be placed on games that have loot boxes or microtransactions, kind of like the way that Star Wars Battlefront 2 did, that seemed like it was randomized?
So, here's how I'd place it out. I'm going to use the most recent example of the game I played very recently for a review, Shenmue 1 and 2. In Shenmue 1 and 2, you can go and play on slot machines, you can gamble in like certain locations with like dice and stuff like that. You're never using your real money. That is all money that is accumulated in the game. You're not putting your own real currency in there. It's a part of the game world, and you can either choose to do it or you don't have to. That's kind of the thing with open worlds, right?
Yeah. So now, for a game like that, do you believe that the gambling moniker should be on there? Because I almost feel like it would be because gambling is a part of it.
It's treated. See, it's fictionalized gambling. It's treated like fictionalized violence, fictionalized nudity, that kind of stuff. That's fine. You warn people that that's in there because a parent needs to know, is that going to be in there?
Yes.
Do I want to subject my child to that? Yes. But the problem is, the moment it becomes a gambling service where you can put in your own currency, for instance, if you're putting your own money into Grand Theft Auto and you can take that digital money and turn it into some like gambling initiative within the game, then guess what? You're actually gambling with money you put in, right? And even if you can't take the money out, it's still money you're placing into the game, which is an encouragement for children to play and stuff like that. So it is a problem, regardless of how you look at it or not. And when you look at Star Wars Battlefront 2, Street Fighter. Street Fighter has gambling in its own right with certain websites where they actually vote between two people.
You mean
playing.
saltybets.com?
Well, saltybet.com, but there's actually it's gambling is a massive problem right now in the video game industry. You have a whole bunch of esports that are rising up all over the place that are basically introducing these kind of gambling initiatives, and this kind of box that warns parents about that stuff, that's what this is here for. No one at Valve ever thought that Counter-Strike was ever going to be used as a gambling initiative, right?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, but then it happened because the community made it so.
Right.
And right now you're seeing a whole bunch of games being turned into esports, and the same thing is happening with them. Fortnite right now may look kind of nice and fluffy on the outside, but there's a lot of people right now that are voting and betting against certain people playing the game and winning in certain stats like that. And it's becoming a huge, massive problem.
It is a problem, but it's a problem that is not necessarily solved by what's going on with PEGI right now, because it's beyond the bounds of the game.
Absolutely,
right? So that's where my worries were kind of coming in. Like, just because we can label these games and maybe like either inform consumers or like make a consumer not purchase a game whatsoever, like there are still ways that people can circumvent it so that the game looks fine. Oh, it has just its regular rating, no other in-game purchase content there. But meanwhile, if your son or daughter does want to go to a website and pay money or gamble in another way, they can do it without it being known.
And like this is the sad part. I think paid DLC in general is a bad idea. And the reason I think it is, now that you're seeing it on the boxes, it's a costly endeavor. It's going to scare some consumers away. And the realistic notion is, unless the game is given away for free and you're charging for things on top of that, if you're buying for a game and then you have to pay for other things on top of that, it never makes sense. I've seen games that give away all the DLC and they're far more successful than the ones that don't, because they basically make more purchases. It makes the boxes that are on shelves far more valuable because more people are willing to buy that one copy of the game.
So when I think of games that are a little less egregious that still kind of charge for DLC later, I think of Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
So if you bought the first edition of Shovel Knight, all the other DLC, as far as I remember, was free. But if you wanted to buy in a little bit later to Shovel Knight after the DLC had been released, the price of the game itself, the core game, was a little higher.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could have bought it day one for a lower price. If you bought it a year later when there was like another DLC pack released, it was like $5 extra or something. That seems better.
Even if you're not completely accurate in that, it doesn't matter, because it's still a better option than what you're seeing right now with a lot of these companies that are basically doing this. We've seen a lot of first-person shooting games that they're like Counter-Strike and I guess Call of Duty and Battlefield. They're trying to move to a point where they're giving away the DLC for free because they're seeing that it's actually starting to harm them.
Right. They're seeing a drop-off in sales.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's basically because you're getting way too many games that kind of feel the same, and they all are requiring you to pay way too much money. So all it takes is for one of them to offer way too much value, and then suddenly everybody has to step back.
I believe also when you see a game like Fortnite that's out there for free, doing so well, and then you start to see that you're releasing a product that people have to pay for, and then pay on top of that, it's like, okay, no, we have to do something to kind of compete with this other system. So like, yes, no, everything's free, but you have to pay for that base game, where it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Fortnite.
I mean, I hate seeing... I want to know when I go to buy a game if I see it on the back. Now, you and I, we're video game reviewers. We do this for a living. We typically know if a game's going to have DLC in it because we've already done the research, we've already paid attention. The average consumer, that's what this warning is for, right? So,
like, just looking at this warning in general, I think it's good, right? Yeah. I think any time that you can get more information out to the consumer, that's wonderful. I just hope that this does nothing but help the consumer, and like I really hope that the rating isn't being circumvented in one way or another. That's all.
What I hope this basically entails is that companies are going to become more apparent and aware of what that mark will do on your box. Essentially, the idea is, if you have a game that is really good and it's on the shelves on a store right now and it says paid DLC on it, that should harm the game significantly enough where game developers are like, you know what? Maybe we don't do that. Yeah. I've seen so many games that are on store shelves that have retained their original value for a very long time because it's just a good game and it sells because of that.
If you have to hide a feature of your game because you think it won't sell your game, don't put in that freaking feature.
I know, right?
Like it's that simple.
It really is. It's such a benign idea, but I mean that's just it.
The thing that kind of gets to me though is that DLC is part of that branch, and some DLC is great. It's like in the 90s we had expansion packs, right? Yeah. So The Witcher 3, for example, they had some expansion packs. They had some free expansions as well. But there was some paid DLC, but it was massive. It was like getting another, like the StarCraft DLC back in the day, or anything like that. not DLC, the expansion packs.
So basically, when you're selling these games, you have a box on the store shelves. If you're going to have like a DLC mark on there, put somewhere on the box, all DLC is free. You know, do something like that, and people will be like, oh, if I buy this, I'm not bringing it home to pay for more things,
yes.
Right? It is. I know that there's a bunch of gamers out there watching right now that are like, what's the big deal? I pay for DLC all the time. And you know what? That's great. If you're paying for extra things and you're okay with that, that's fine. But you didn't have to do that. That was not something that was initially there in the gaming industry. And it's not something that, well, the gaming industry is evolving, and games are becoming more expensive, blah, blah, blah. That's not, those are no good arguments, okay? Movies are stupidly expensive to make, and they don't charge you extra to see a specific actor in a scene when you bring the disc home. It doesn't work that way. The way it's working in video games right now is completely backwards, because what they're doing is they're undercutting the value of the game initially in the store, and it's harming the way that they appeal on the store shelves. A consumer that goes to the store and sees a game that they have to go home to pay more money just to play it has lost value in that game, and if they try to resell it, it loses value, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes wrong with that. By making that a problem for consumers, they make it a problem for retailers, and they start to create huger problems down the road. Now look, we're moving to a very quickly moving to a digital future where everything is being sold digitally. If we have digital games that have that exact same problem, digital games technically should never lose value, right? That shouldn't really happen. Over time, maybe you give a discount on the game or whatever it is, but the idea of a game losing value because it's accumulating store shelf space doesn't make sense anymore. But when you put paid DLC on there, there's no reason to make a collector's edition of that game because you can always get people to be buying it that way. Retailers have to put those Game of the Year editions on there because they have to basically spark more interest into that game sale. Now, we're not seeing this from certain companies. For instance, I actually don't believe we're going to see an Ultimate Edition of Zelda. Well, there's a lot of DLC in that game now, right? Paid DLC.
Yeah. So, but we did see Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and
that's true.
Yeah.
Right. But that was coming to another system.
Right.
Right.
It's like it's a beefed up version of that original game. That did include all its DLC, but it did not. Yeah.
Smash Brothers U.
Yeah.
Right. Smash Brothers on the Wii U. Smash Brothers on the 3DS had DLC. That DLC didn't see a collector's version that was released later on. Nintendo kept the value of those games up high because they do not reduce that price whatsoever. That's one strategy, but I don't think it's a smart strategy.
You're mostly right. Nintendo, like we can't use a blanket statement for Nintendo because there were games that came out like New Super Mario Brothers U that had plus the Luigi U thing come out, which is the only one that I can immediately think of. But yeah, for the most part, as far as Nintendo's like first-party games are concerned, yeah, they don't do those ultimate packages, and I respect that company a lot more because of that.
Yeah, right. Because by not doing that, they basically keep the value of the game high. Yes, they're still introducing paid DLC, right? But by keeping the value of the game high, it means that consumers out there are not going to be going, okay, maybe I wait 3 weeks or a couple months to get the Game of the Year edition of the game or whatever. They'll do game selects. They'll do because they've had that. They've actually had games that they go, okay, this game is sold like a million copies, so here's a new release of it to excite people about it and reduce the price.
Yeah, reducing the price, I think, is the major bullet point there. They're like, okay, no, a lot of people have bought this, but maybe some people are on the fence about it. It sold really well, so now it's $10 or $20 less, and that's what a lot of companies were doing in the 90s. PlayStation and Nintendo as well.
Yeah. Basically, this is just like kind of like a way to think about this. If a game developer is watching right now and you're thinking about making a video game and you want people to be buying it and you're worried about this, make the DLC free. It's not going to harm you. I know you're probably thinking you're going to make a lot of money from all the paid DLC. You're going to make a lot more money by keeping the game at a slightly higher price over time and making more sales that way.
Right.
By reducing the value of the game on the store shelf, in the digital store, anywhere like that, you're basically harming yourself for no good reason and you're doing way more work. Make a game that's worthwhile and continues to keep growing and growing, and people are going to want to buy it. Minecraft is a game that has a whole bunch of like cosmetic DLC that you can pay for, but all of the things in the game that you would get, you don't pay extra for. You don't pay specific features to get like unique biomes and stuff like that, right? It's all built into the game, and that's one of the most successful games ever.
It is one of the most successful games ever, and they didn't have to stoop to the level of some of these other. It just feels like it feels so seedy, some of the approaches that people are taking, and it kind of just came to a head in 2017 with Star Wars and with I believe Need for Speed as well had some pretty
Oh, yeah,
egregious
sure.
stuff. So yeah, like I'm glad that the rating systems are digging into this, promoting like education as far as your purchases are concerned. I guess that's it. Like, education is fantastic. You know,
it's important. People really need to know about this stuff. But if you're watching Rerez, there's a very good chance that you're already informed about this. But how do you feel about your mom, your dad, your brothers, and your sisters that might not be that into video games, but they play them enough and they're not aware of these things that are happening? There are going to be packages of games that get sold out to people that are missing chunks that are very valued experiences of the game that people are just missing out on, and their video game is kind of colored in a different light because they didn't realize there was just that much more game to play. What do you think? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Let us know.